And we are live on YouTube. Good morning, everybody. We're going to bring in our Facebook groups, Atlanta Falcons fans on all Falcons, and Scott Kennedy Sports. It was actually turned into a pretty good Indianapolis Colts hub. Colts stuff I've been posting there has been going bonkers. Good morning, everybody. This is the Falcons Podcast. If you want to listen to or watch, I guess listen to after the fact, you can go to falconspodcast.com. Let me put that up on the screen. falconspodcast.com, and it will give you all the places you want to go listen to: Spotify, Apple, all of those different things that you want to do. iHeart, and while you're there, leave us a rating. Let us know what you think. That helps us find more Falcons fans and find more people just like you. My name is Scott Kennedy. I'm your host, and this is my friend Nick Kendell, co-host. He is in Seattle. I am in Atlanta. So we are coast to coast on our football coverage this morning, and he is up awfully early today. Nick, how are you doing this morning, my friend?
I'm doing pretty well. I had some early Christmas gifts arrive yesterday with the old school Denver Bronco replica helmet in the background, so excited about that. And pretty good. Tired. I think I'm going to be putting up Christmas lights today because it's not going to be rainy for the first time rain/snow for the first time in a bit. So hopefully not going to fall off my roof, Chevy Chase Christmas vacation style, but doing pretty well.
Well, good on you. I carry the bins in and out of the basement. That's my contribution. I'm not doing that. If you want to, I'm not going to say I'm not doing. That's too much freaking work. Holiday, it's I don't know. Vacation stuff shouldn't be work. That's a lot of work.
Yeah, so, it is. As my dad says.
I want to get into it a little bit today. The topic of the day was pending free agents. The Falcons have 28 free agents. You've heard me mention before that everybody on this team is either on a rookie deal or a one-year contract. And that includes a quarterback like Marcus Mariota, who does have a 2-year deal, but it's basically a 1-year deal with a club option when you're talking about just having a $2 million dead cap money. You don't have a contract. That means they can waive you and only you count $2 million against the cap. Falcons gave up $40 million in Matt Ryan. They gave up $30 million in Julio Jones. They gave up $20 million in Deion Jones. You think they're going to blink twice about waiving a guy with a $2 million dead cap hit? No, they're not. So I want to go through some of these free agents, and we'll talk at the same time. We'll grade some of these guys and talk about who has performed and underperformed. But before we get into that, I want to look back at the Steelers game a little bit and just kind of on the season on a whole and talk about some guys that have overperformed. PFF, Pro Football Focus, I've mentioned before, we talk about who's grading the graders, and it's hard to do a true national database when you've got different people looking at different games because not everybody looks the same way. I ran a national scouting team, and I had guys that were star happy. They were like, this guy's a 4-star. I'm like, dude, come on. And then I'd have guys that were really, really good players, and they were tougher graders. Well, this guy might be a 3, probably a high 2. I'm like, if he was over in this area with this guy, he'd be a 4.5 star. So it's tough. That said, I think the guys doing the Falcons do a good job. I'm pleased with what I see, which makes me think that, okay, I don't have to watch everything. I can trust them to grade these guys pretty accurately, which I like. It's a nice resource to have. So that said, Drake London came in as the number 9 overall rookie this year or this week for his work against the Pittsburgh Steelers, and he had 12 targets on only 22 routes that he ran. He only ran 22 routes, but he had 12 targets on those routes. So not a bad day, a good showing for Drake London.
Yeah, he's been a good pick. I think he's a great scheme fit for what you guys are trying to do. Again, it wasn't my number 1 or even my number 2 wide receiver in this last class, but considering the physicality that you guys are looking for and the size, he's a great player. So I'm really curious to see what he does going forward. Year 1 to year 2, he's still exceedingly young. One of the younger players in the last draft class, if I recall correctly. So excited to see what he can do. That makes sense. And the fact that he's stepping up, it's weird that he only had 22 routes run. I guess that's just a part of the Falcons' low volume
running the ball 30 times.
Yeah. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
That's exactly
55 plays, and you're running 30. You run it 30 times.
Yeah, but I can
pass plays, and if you're not in, if you're taking a breather or whatnot. So yeah, it's should be fresh.
Yeah, and I can tell you, just because, he should be getting all these targets and catches because he's the only one out there who's healthy, in terms of him versus Kyle Pitts. I can tell you, watching the Broncos, that's not the case. We have Cortland Sutton out there who has 1 target for 0 yards. Granted, he missed the second half with a hamstring injury, but the fact that he was even getting out there 12 targets and 80-something yards in this game. I mean, that's
what do you play, about 25 snaps? But yeah,
Yep.
So he was. He had a good game. He still kind of strikes me, but he's young. He's a rookie. Kind of strikes me as a number 2, like an Al. You may have heard of these guys, but an Alvin Harper to Michael Irvin for the Cowboys. Those dynasties. A John Taylor to Jerry Rice. A really good number 2. Well, you want Kyle Pitts could be that number 1, and I think you still could use another dynamic pass catcher, someone with a little bit different skill set. Dare I say a Calvin Ridley type? He's already been traded. I said forever that wasn't going to happen. That was never, ever, ever, ever going to happen. But someone with his skill set would fit well in this team, I think. A Jerry Jeudy in a 3rd-round pick, maybe.
I'd rather build around an explosive vertical speed threat kind of guy. Like, the ideal fit for me on this team would be a Will Fuller on the outside.
Just stretch it out a little bit to loosen up the box some. I just think 100%. Somebody that can some run after the catch, make you miss, guys. But they're different. Their run after the catch ability is I can break a tackle.
Yeah.
Kyle Pitts and Drake London is I can beat a corner I outweigh by 45, 50 pounds. Let's say good morning to some folks in the chat. Michael Ranquillo coming in nice and early. Says good morning, Scott and Nick on the Falcons podcast. Good morning, Michael. And AE has come in early too as well. Good morning. Good morning. RC Plane Builder has come in. He says Lorenzo got to stay. We'll get to him because I think he's actually number 1 on the list of the pending free agents. I think he is the highest paid pending free agent. So do you want to keep your highest paid free agent for what Lorenzo Carter has done so far this year or not done so far this year? We'll talk about that a little bit. Dom Jaramillo coming in. So good morning, Scott, Nick, and Dog Nation. We got Ohio State. Bring it on. That should be a fun game. I saw Atlanta Journal-Constitution may have been Mark Bradley, who's got to be 80 years old by now because I was reading him when I was a kid, a columnist, when columnists used to run the papers. Talking about that being the championship game. I'm like, come on, man. I'm like, Michigan beat the hell out of Ohio State. Man. That's not the championship game. I mean, Michigan is legitimately in this thing, and they won their conference championship. Let's not look past the Wolverines here. I mean, they earned it. Without a doubt. It's not even just, if they do good. No, they earned it. Rob coming in. Good morning, gents. Happy hump day to you as well. And Kevin, first one in on Facebook. Appreciate you coming in. The likes are starting to come in. Jake Arthur has come in. James is in the house. And Kevin has come in as well. Thank you for hitting that like button. One more thing on PFF grades I want to get to, because it will tie into our talk about free agents, because one of the highest, well, I'm not going to give it away yet, but we talked about Chris Lindstrom and asked the question last week, is he the best offensive lineman in the NFL? And we talk about, the worth, the tackle versus guard, and he was graded just a little bit under Wirfs, but he was, let me see where I've got this.
Was it Wirfs or was it Trent Williams?
Trent Williams, I'm sorry. Trent Williams hadn't played has only played 9 games, but now Lindstrom has pulled even with him at 93.8 after another 95. He is tied with Trent Williams as the highest graded PFF lineman in the entire NFL. Is Chris Lindstrom the best offensive lineman in the NFL? He's in the discussion.
Yeah.
He is in the discussion. He has been really, really good, Nick.
Yeah, he's been phenomenal. It's been a pleasure to watch him in contrast to the right guard play of my Iowa Hawkeyes and the guard play of the Denver Broncos. So he's been incredible this season. Pay the man. He's going to get a Quentin Nelson level contract. This is one reason that you probably talk about bringing in a rookie cost-controlled contract, because then you can overpay, quote unquote, on the offensive line a little bit. The budget works out that way. This was also one of the conversations about the drafting 2 offensive linemen in the same cycle, is that it puts you in a weird position when both these guys hit. Drafting 2 offensive linemen in the first round in the same cycle puts you in a weird position of paying these guys at the same time if they both are relative hits or big hits. But I mean, Chris Lindstrom, he's the straw that stirs the drink. Well, maybe not, but on the offensive line, he's the straw that stirs the drink. You can't let him walk. he's incredible.
Well, yeah, he's got his 5th-year option is picked up next year at $13 million, which is a good chunk of change for a guard that's going to put him, high, one of the more highly paid guards, top 10 for sure. Jake Matthews is on a $34 million cap hit. I think the highest paid offensive lineman this year was a 21, and it was like Garrett Bowles at the time. So almost a 50% increase. They will likely restructure that to a certain extent. I'm almost hoping they don't. But if you move that forward, if you can just stomach that and get your flexibility back for 2024, then you can pay him. Between the two guys, Jake Matthews and Chris Lindstrom, you've already got $46 million tied into your cap next year. And you still have the second most cap space available in the NFL.
Yeah.
So the money's there, is what I'm trying to say. Chris Lindstrom's going to you can give him Quentin Nelson money at $20 million a year. You can make him one of the top 5 highest paid offensive linemen, one of the top 2 or 3 guards, and not have it negatively impact your salary cap.
Yep, 100%. He's been incredible so far this season. He's going to get paid, and he deserves it. I'm curious. And we got Kevin Mapp coming in here rocking the Southern Miss logo, saying Lindstrom is top 5 for sure. I mean, hard to argue. He's definitely one of the best offensive linemen. I can't think of many guards right now that you definitively take over what he's playing, but he's entered his name in the upper echelon of the guard play without a doubt. I mean, the Quentin Nelsons of the world, the Zach Martins of the world, the Joel Batinios of the world. I mean, he's got a case against every single one of them, or with every single one of them. And we got Joe Cannon coming in, always changing the profile picture here. Joe says, great morning, Scott and Nick. Good to see you, Joe. We appreciate you. We also got Chris Walker coming in saying, good morning, guys. Totally agree about needing another wide receiver. Zacchaeus is a 3 on his best day and a 4 on most days. You just need to diversify the passing portfolio of this team. Mm-hmm. It's not as imperative as improving on the defensive side of the ball, getting the types of bodies and athletes that you need to compete in the league, which this Falcons team lacks overall on the edge cornerback position, maybe another defensive lineman as well, but another wide receiver would definitely help. Do you invest in that before you have the quarterback that's worth investing around? That's a debate. You already have those 2 big investments in Pitts and London. I guess you could. I mean, if you have a good chance at a good player, then you go for it. But I agree with you completely. And there's some options out there I really like. So you don't have to use a first-round pick in this upcoming draft on Jalen Hyatt from Tennessee, but maybe somebody like Zay Flowers from Boston College. He's an explosive, deep play, smaller, but he's down the field ability and dynamic in that way.
Chris Walker coming in. Love the new profile pic, Chris. Says, good morning, guys. Totally agree about needing a wide receiver. Zacchaeus is a 3 on his best day and a 4 on most days. Yeah, he is. Yep. If we lump in Kyle Pitts as a pass catcher, he could be a legit number 1. But again, I'd like to have a little diversity in my attack. I'd like to have some downfield speed in there. Pitts can run. Don't get me wrong. I mean, he's a 4.4 guy. But it's different. There's different types of 4.4s when it comes to straight line speed. Ryan Adonis comes in. Welcome. That's kind of a newer name. So welcome in. Appreciate you being here and jumping in the chat with a great question. Do we really need to pay a guy that much for a guard spot? That's a great question, because again, it is a guard. We talk about position of value. And my thought on this, Ryan, typically would be, no. I agree with you, no. But Chris Lindstrom was drafted as a Falcon. He's still just 25 years old. We're talking about one of the best offensive linemen in the NFL, period. That I've also said, and I don't want to go back on this, that when we're talking, I usually talk about it with draft picks, but I'll talk about it with money too, is game changers don't have positional value. A game changer is a game changer is a game changer. Right? Is Chris Lindstrom a game changer for this team, for this offense? Yes. You don't have, if you were to do a 5-year deal, you wouldn't have big quarterback money coming in, unless you go out and do a Lamar Jackson type of deal where you're going to give a guy $50 million. So you can build up the infrastructure around him, and the money's already there. That was kind of my point on this, Nick, is the money's already there. You've got $46 million tied into Jake Matthews and Chris Lindstrom next year, and you still have the second most cap space available. So if I spread that out more balanced like it should be, even 20 and 20, Matthews is overpaid at 20. I know. 20 and 20, you're saving $6 million, and you've got a 25-year-old guard locked up for the next 5 years of his career, and he's been good. He's been good. This isn't a flash in the pan.
Yeah.
So I'm yes. I'm a yes on this one, Ryan, but I think it is absolutely worth asking, and that's a great question.
And I think also for this Arthur Smith scheme that's so predicated on the run game and getting explosive runs, that investing on the offensive line is the way to go. Keep it going there. So I'd pay him, no doubt. And also, if you're curious, I mean, what did he say? $13 million next year. If you want to, I know we disagree, or not disagree. I'm not against you on this, but let's say it comes down to it. McGarry says, no way in heck I'm signing anything, and you do tag him. You can do a Chris Lindstrom contract where his cap hit is actually lower next season. And then you can kind of push that salary aside for McGarry. And I was listening to Daniel Jeremiah earlier this week, and he talks about teams don't really view the individual contracts of these players as much as they do the positions on the team. So you think we have this amount of money for the offensive line, we have this amount of money for whatever position, the quarterback. I mean, so if you are paying so little, also you can move things around if your quarterback is super cheap. So I think it's definitely an option. If you do pay him, you're probably on that rookie quarterback contract plan. And given where the Falcons are right now, they might have to make a move this season for that kind of guy, because you got to worry that you're heading towards 9-8, 8-9 territory without the quarterback improvement if Ritter's not the guy. But definitely, I think it's definitely a great question, because I'm not a big guard guy. But
it's worth asking. It's worth asking for sure. Chris Walker comes in. I want to hit this one first, though, because I give Dimitroff so much crap that, I do want to give him credit to try and at least somewhat fair, recognize your own biases. My bias is I think Dimitroff was criminally negligent in how he wasted this team. That's a bias of mine. I'll let you know straight out. But he says, keep in mind, Lindstrom was drafted and signed by Dimitroff, so that explains the backloading of his contract. No, his contract is slotted. So that is his contract escalates next year because that's just the standard fifth-year option. So Chris Lindstrom's contract right now is just a standard rookie contract for his spot in the draft. What happens next is up to Terry Fontenot. So and Arthur Blank. So the backloading on this contract is based on where he was drafted. It doesn't really have anything to do with that one. And Kevin agrees, is you absolutely have to re-sign Lindstrom. And again, there's part of this, Nick, in the fandom is, when you start letting, okay, we've got the best offensive lineman in the NFL, we're going to let him walk. There's PR involved here. There is. Chris asks, realistically, is Dahlman or Hennessy the answer at center? So Matt Hennessy, who grades really well on PFF after I just gave him all the plaudits. He graded well last year on PFF. The eye test told me differently. In his one start this year, he's graded really well. My eye test told me differently. Dahlman is in his first year at center. He's a second-year player. He was a fourth-round draft pick out of Stanford, I believe, and won the starting center job in camp, and hasn't been very good at the point of attack. Someone mentioned, I think I saw on Twitter as I'm, live tweet. I don't live tweet the game. I think that's annoying. The play. I'm watching the damn game. I don't need your play-by-play. You're muted. Give me a comment on the big plays. I'm interested. But it was like someone's like, my God, Chris Dahlman just got blown 5 yards into the backfield off the snap of that ball, forcing whichever running back had it to go wide. I retweeted that one. I just said, I've got this saved in a text file so I can just copy and paste it when I want to tweet it to save time. Can he get better? Sure, he can. Am I going to trust those two at my center position going into next season? No, I'm not, Nick. I'm looking to upgrade.
I haven't done enough of a deep dive on both of these guys to have a very strong opinion on that. So I will say that I'm very much putting in this comment that I can change my take on it if I go back and do a more of an individual scouting on these players. But from a team building perspective, if you are going to allocate a bunch of resources to left guard and Chris Lindstrom, to right tackle Caleb McGarry, you have questions at left guard, it might make the most sense to run it back with Dahlman and Hennessy for one season just because they are both super young, cost controlled, and in theory should be improving. Now, we just talked about how much Chris Lindstrom is a plus, one of the best guards in football. That means that he's helping these players, and they're still struggling at the point of attack in some of their assignments. But I think that given the other areas, if one becomes apparent, obviously available to you in the draft, and he's your guy and you love the fit and you can see him for the next 10 years being your center, absolutely go for it. Don't let average players keep you from upgrading. But I don't think it's something where it's like hell-bent on improving this season if it's not obviously apparent, because you have young cost-controlled guys on their rookie contracts that are controlled for Hennessy 1 more year, Dahlman 2 more years. So that's just overarching opinion. Obviously, they've been weak spots on the line, but I think you can have one spot that is okay out there, especially considering we have a question mark at 2 of the spots. 2 of the spots going into next year with McGarry at right tackle and left guard position in general.
Dave says, give these guys some time to work with that underrated O-line coach. This is their second year with these guys. And that's the thing. And I agree with Nick. And I'm not saying go into free agency, but I would draft a center. I would look to use, I think the Falcons have a pair of third rounders. Let me look it up real quick. But I would very, very, the Falcons are up to the number 10 pick in the NFL draft at 5 and 8. And they've got a third, a fourth, and a fourth. So I would consider looking at that third at 74, at 113 and 123, and then really at the top of the 5th round at 142. I would strongly be looking to bring in another center. And so I may have Dahlman again next year. Okay. But am I going into that am I going into the offseason thinking I'm good at center with those two? No, I'm not. I'm looking to upgrade that position. I want to do it for cheap, but I'm not. Let me see here. There's one more question. It says, good morning, fellas. Who are going to be the higher end O-linemen entering free agency this offseason? Good question, Kenny. Kenneth Booker coming in, because we're gonna get to one here in just a minute. So let's get to the topic at hand, which was buy or sell, or hello, goodbye, however you want to say it. The Atlanta Falcons have 28 free agents pending. The number one, we're going to talk about, should they be back or should they be let go? Should we let them walk? Because there's going to be money available and there's going to be a lot of open spots. Number one on that list, and I clicked off it because I'm a moron, was Lorenzo Carter, edge. He is on $3.5 million. He is 26 years old. He'll be 27 next season. What do you think, Nick? Should he stay or should he go?
I think he's been a pretty average player this season overall, and for the expense has not been great. Now, granted, it's going to be a bump because of the position he plays in general. I do like the versatility. Scott will roll his eyes at this, but a football coach term, buzzword these days, simulated pressures. Falcons have done some of that. And Lorenzo Carter's ability to rush.
That's fake blitz to you and I.
There's got to be something more nuanced to it. I got to get in a coach's ear about this. Maybe I'll ask Mr. Pease, excuse me. But his ability to drop into coverage and play in space on top of the ability to rush is super valuable and versatile in today's NFL. So I'd be interested in bringing him back. I'm not looking to overpay him. I think the biggest question you have here in this regard is that how do you feel about Ebiketie and Malone going into next season? If you think those guys are ready to take the next step and you are potentially positioning yourself to take an edge early in the draft, which at 10 overall makes sense. You're not going to get a Will Anderson there, but there's going to be some edge talent there available, I would assume. You never know. They could fly off the board. They could be 3 of the first 5 picks. But that's the big question. I would do it if it's a fair deal. I'm not going to look to pay him any more than he got this season.
That's where I am on this. I'm like, okay, he hasn't been great as a starting edge. You're like, okay, he hasn't been a huge upgrade over what we had in Dante Fowler last year. He's a hell of a lot cheaper than Dante Fowler, though.
More versatile.
I click on sacks. He's got 3.5 sacks, 41 tackles, made some big plays. Has never quite lived up to the athleticism that he's had in there. But at $3.5 million, if I bump him to 4, local kid. I think he played at Norcross, Peachtree Ridge, somewhere in there. I think it was Norcross. That's good backup money. And he's an excellent backup. He would be an excellent backup. He'd go from a starter, a cut rate starter at $3.5 million to a good backup, a good number off the edge, a good number 3 off the edge. So yeah, I would definitely consider bringing him back, depending on what he does off of there. I don't think he's going to get any big money deals.
No,
but $3.5 to $4 million, I'd be okay with that. I wouldn't want him to be my starter next year. I would hope to upgrade with the draft picks and free agent money. I'm going after a number 1. I'm going after a number 1 at edge. That's going to be maybe my top priority other than quarterback in the offseason. But yes, bring him back. Lorenzo Carter on a good deal.
And just to add one more point on that, I think you can find yourself a Lorenzo Carter in free agency if a type of him, if he prices himself out. I don't think I'm looking to overspend on him at all. If he gets, $5.5 million per year over, let's say, or $6 million per year over 3-4 years, I'll find somebody else, because I think the way this team is set up right now, you do have 2 young guys that I like a lot, but again, you need to first go after a primary edge rusher, and at one, if there is. And somebody asked, about the offensive linemen in the upcoming class, the edge rushers? Honestly, I don't, because I don't pay attention until the cuts happen, because the market changes so drastically. And I get really sad seeing, all these guys are going to be free agents. Half of them signed before the league year opens because they're the good players. So I typically don't dig into the free agents until they're official. But I would go after a 1A. If you can't get Carter, then you can probably find somebody with his skill set / production ability on similar prices as it is right now.
So PFF did a top 5 pending free agents at every position. And the dude at Indianapolis wasn't on it. I can't remember.
Ngakoue.
He wasn't on it. I'm like, that surprises me a little bit. All he does is pile up 8 to 10 sacks a year. But it was Marcus Davenport, Saints, Jadeveon Clowney, Melvin Ingram, Justin Houston, Charles Omenihu.
Charles Omenihu.
Yep. As the top 5. I'm like, I'd be interested in Ngakoue on that list. There wasn't anybody on there that really made me go, yeah, I've got to have it. So I'm looking at the draft again on that. And a 3 to 4 year contract, Ryan, on this one. He has made some big plays, been a little inconsistent on this, and I don't think you have to. A 3 or 4 year contract that'd be fine with not a lot of guarantees. Then they're just club options, which I'm okay with. He might not be okay with that.
Yeah,
is the thing, because if he has a big year, then I want out. And then you're talking about a holdout from that. Lindstrom had a younger brother that came out last year, and
Alec,
who was mentioning him here. I said, I wish we'd sign him for the practice squad. Now I can't find it. It was Michael. Michael coming in this morning. Good morning, Michael. So morning, boys. I wish we'd pick up Lindstrom's little brother for the practice squad. Wouldn't mind it. I definitely wouldn't mind it. Appreciate you coming in. Kevin asks a question. He says, since we have a ton of money in draft picks, is there a side of the ball to focus on, one or the other? And I've got an answer for this one. Nick, I'll let you go first.
He's fine. You're talking about Alec Lindstrom. Let's see about that. But as far as the money in the draft picks, you just got to get good players on this team. I think there are areas that obviously you don't want to spend on. Like, I wouldn't pay big money for a tight end personally in this upcoming class with Kyle Pitts, this upcoming draft class. But get good, and I also wouldn't pay big money for a linebacker. That's another one. That's just more of a philosophical thing for me, and probably safety. But definitely you want to focus. Just get good players on this team. If you want to be even better on the offense, that's great. If you want to pay on the defense, that's fine. But I don't think the Falcons are at a point where they should be limited in those options. And depending on what type of good player you can bring in here, then you pivot elsewhere. But you don't want to be like, okay, I want to pay the best cornerback on the market. Well, what if the best cornerback doesn't want to sign with you, but the best edge rusher does? So definitely different directions you can go with that.
That said, Kevin, I'm going defense. I think the defense needs the biggest upgrade in talent. However,
quarterback,
depending on what you do at quarterback.
This quarterback is $1 million.
If you might need to use a first-round draft pick on a quarterback, you might need to use a couple first-round draft picks on a quarterback if you want to get into the Lamar Jackson sweepstakes. And then you're talking about the money and the draft picks going to the quarterback position. So that all depends, which is why this next month is going to be very interesting, hoping that Desmond Ridder gets a start. And then, like I've said before, they may already know. They're with him every day. They may already know, hey, this isn't going to be the guy. I've been around this game a long time. This isn't going to be the guy. They may already know. We don't. I'd like to see it. I really like what I saw from Desmond Ridder in the preseason and at the Senior Bowl. I'd like to see him play these next 4 games to get an idea of what you need to do, because if you're okay at the quarterback position, then you can pour a lot of those resources into the defensive side of the ball and or best player available. If, a star wide receiver falls in your lap, okay. But the defense is what's hurting the most. It lacks depth. It lacks talent among their starters. It needs an influx of resources. I mean, the top two, the last 2 draft picks have been both pass catchers. There's been not much put in. 2 second round picks, I guess, with Richie Grant, who's been
improving,
and Troy Anderson. After that, Arnold Mbeketi, I'm sorry. So
and
who has been good. So there's been a little bit, but not the high end. There hasn't been the top 10 picks going into that. You've been putting those into blockers at the. We've been putting those into outside edge blockers, otherwise known as wide receivers and tight ends.
Yeah.
Michael 100%. Asks who's the top 5 corners on that list. Jamel Dean, Tampa. James Bradbury, Philly. Cam Sutton, Pittsburgh. He played well. Patrick Peterson's got to be 60 at Minnesota. Jonathan Jones, and then honorable mention are Marcus Peters and Byron Murphy Jr. Next on the list is your friend and mine, 27, soon to be 28 years old. Look, there's another thing. They were drafted in the same class, and McGary's 2 years older than Chris Lindstrom.
Yeah.
28 years old, pending free agent. He's on $2.5 million. Buy or sell?
I think you got to buy. I think you got to find a way to bring him back. He's been playing good football, and let me tell you guys, there are just, 64 starting tackle spots. There are only about 28 tackles in the NFL that teams are happy with right now. Maybe let's say 28 to 36 tackles that people are happy with. And McGary is one of the tackles you should be happy with. The fact that you have 2, I think, is a huge bonus. There's teams who don't have 1 right now. So I think you bring back McGary. It definitely gets more complicated investing that much in the offensive line. If you're trying to upgrade the quarterback position, you do, I think, paint yourself somewhat in the rookie quarterback or bust situation with the contract. But because Matthews would make big money, Lindstrom's going to make big money, then McGary on top of it. But you also don't let good players go at premium positions, especially for an ascending team like the Falcons. This isn't a team that needs to be torn down and reset. You're a team that's gearing up to make a run. So I think you got to bring him back.
Guess where he is now rated among tackles by PFF after a good showing last week? Guess what number tackle he is on PFF? Caleb McGary, right tackle, subject of much angst and scorn prior to this year.
I'm going to go number 9.
5. He is the 5th rated offensive tackh in the National Football League by Pro Football Focus, making him the 9th overall with an overall grade now of 84.3. His run blocking is 3rd. The top two of the top 3 run blockers, Chris Lindstrom, and number 3, Caleb McGary. Now, part of that scheme as well.
Yep.
And some good coaching and what they're being asked to do, without a doubt. Part of it's Caleb McGary improving,
yes.
And which is also coaching and scheme. That's good. So yes, what do you need to do on this? And Kevin says, to the point, why did it take this long? You're 28 years old. I know, because you've got a chance to go from $1.5 million to 15 million. You got a chance to 10x your salary. He doesn't strike me as someone who never tried, I never thought there was an attitude problem in there or anything. There was just kind of an ability problem in there. So yes, you are approaching him with a contract. Absolutely. 100%. Will you be able to get it? He's listed as the number 4 pending offensive tackle free agent in the NFL by PFF. He's going to have some suitors out there. He's a suitor. 15 there. I was like, hey, Nick looks like he's falling asleep on me while it's going on.
No, I'm here.
Let me break out the "Oh brother, where art thou?"
Great movie.
You've got to approach him for another contract. So he's definite on a buy.
Yep.
Michael Ranquillo asked, which Falcons player was selected for the 2023 Walter Payton Man of the Year Award nominee? Chris Lindstrom. We go back to the guy who we want to go ahead and pay $20 million a year to as a guard. And like I said, it matters to fans. This is a guy on here. And Ryan Adonis says, let's remember McGarry had to block for Matt Ryan. Matt Ryan has made Quentin Nelson look bad with Ryan's lack of mobility. And some of that is scheme too. I watched a safety walk up into the A or B gap, whichever one comes first. I don't know. The gap between the center and the guard. And it was on it was between Nelson and the center. A safety, a 4-5 guy at worst, walks right up and shows blitz, simulated pressure, except it wasn't simulated this time. He took off.
Yeah.
Those two parted. I mean, he had 5 yards on either side of him. He had a 10-yard gap to walk with a straight shot right at Matt Ryan. I'm like, it's hard to put that on Matt Ryan. And I think, Sam Ehlinger was sacked like 12 times. He is mobile, he started 2 games, was 0-2, and he got sacked lots too. That offensive line has regressed in a big way, but I get it. Matt Ryan held onto the ball a little bit. We got into the discussion. I've got into the discussion about, sacks is a good metric of how to grade offensive line. I'm like, not necessarily. That a lot of sacks can go on the quarterback where they don't mind taking a sack, trying to extend a play. But yes, I'm buying on Caleb McGarry. Offer him a contract. It's going to be a little expensive. And that's what I don't like, Nick, is like when we're trying to build the team, I want to invest in new players. I don't want to use up all my resources on guys I already have. That doesn't make me better. But losing someone like this would probably make me worse.
Yeah.
Number 3 on this one, Olamide Zaccheaus. His option was picked up. He got a tender. I forgot what they called it. About 5 minutes before the Russell Gage signing to Tampa Bay was announced. $2.5 million. Wide receiver. He has, let me see where he is. He's probably the leading receiver right now. Olamide Zaccheaus, rushing and receiving. He's got 478 yards receiving, just behind Drake London, who passed him. 32 receptions, 478 yards, and 2 touchdowns for $2.5 million.
He's one of those ones where you look to improve it if you can. I'd be okay bringing him back, but again, I don't think he's enough of a difference maker where if you can probably replace the production for somebody similar if you don't like what he's asking for or if what another team offers him. He's not a building block player. Would love to have him back. Don't get me wrong. But again, I think you can probably shuffle in a similar skill set, similar player, maybe somebody who fits a different type of skill set. You talk about you want to bring in, the shifty guy who beats man coverage. I think Zaccheaus can play some slot and do some route running stuff if you get a vertical guy, but maybe that's not what you're looking for. So I'd be happy coming him back, but it has to be the right price.
I like the value. Michael says I like Oz, but I think with a better QB, he'll do better. I like him too, and I like him at 2.5. I just don't want my $2.5 million guy to be my number 2 receiver.
Yeah,
I don't mind spending that money on Oz. He's worth that, but I want him to be a 4 at $2.5 million. Yep. He might get a better deal than that because he's shown he could go be the Houston Texans number 2, and they might be willing to pay him some more. So I would just want to. I don't want to spend $2.5 million on my 4 unless it's a rookie.
Yeah,
on my number 2 receiver. I want to put a little bit more into that, and I want a little bit more from my number 1, my number 2 receiver than what I'm going to get from Zaccheaus. No offense to Zaccheaus. I think he's played his role incredibly well. And I think he's got a spot on this team as the 4th wide receiver, not the number 2. So he's earned his money. He's worth bringing back. But if it comes down to it, it's Oz and 2.5, or I need that 2.5 to go pay 8.5 to someone else. Sorry, Oz. I got to go get this other guy.
And then you use around 3 or 4
expendable.
Pick. Yeah. Then you can use around 3 or 4
He's
pick.
earned it, no doubt. Good value, but I do think he's expendable. Isaiah Oliver, who's just 26 on 2.5, signed a 1-year deal coming off that injury. Slot corner, 26 years old. He's at 2.4.
Give him 5 over 2 years or 6 over 2 years, with that last year being hardly guaranteed. Let's say 1 million dead cap hit to move on from him. I think you do it. I think it's going to be hard to turn over the entire cornerback room. I really like his size from the slot. I think he's found a home in the slot. So I'd be interested in him. Maybe a little bit biased because I really enjoyed watching his tip film coming out of Colorado a good bit. A few years ago, man, they had Awuzari. No, not Awuzari. I can't remember the name of the cornerback. Chidobe Awuzie. That's who it is. And Isaiah Oliver in the same backfield out there in Colorado. Colorado football going to be fun again. But I think that I would bring him back for something similar to that, just because you need four or five good cornerbacks that you feel comfortable with, given injuries, and he's a solid one.
Isaiah Oliver has not come for me. He's not 100% back from his knee injury. He started the season on injured reserve and got in maybe week 5 or week 6. So you're not getting the best out of Isaiah Oliver. If you can get him back, you got him for 2.5 this year. If you can get him back for similar money in the slot next year, 3.5, yes, do it. I want to see him come back because next year, I think he can play at a higher level than he was playing last year before he got hurt. Familiarity with the scheme, 100% back from injury. He's still just 26 years old. He'll start the season at 26 years old. So he started this season at 25. Yeah, I'd be real interested in bringing him back as well. Patrick Wiltsey coming in. Good morning. You're up nice and early. Our Lion Coffee sponsor, drinking this. So check out lioncoffee.com. Patrick sends us some coffee, and we're happy to give him a shout out because the coffee's great.
God bless him.
And he helps us out. So where was I on that before I got coffee distracted?
You're talking
just
about
Isaiah Oliver. Yes, I would be approaching him with another contract. Rashaan Evans, leading tackler, 27 years old, 1.75. Nick, I feel like this one is kind of in the same vein as what I was talking about, Zacchaeus.
Yep.
He's good value, but at some point, I'm going to have more money. I don't have to shop in the 1.75 bin. I can go maybe get a 3 or 4. Can I get an upgrade on him? It'd be a position that I would be looking to upgrade some, or maybe turn over to Troy Anderson and use that money somewhere else. But at 1.75, I still like him on the roster. I'd try and bring him back. I think he's been good value as well.
I think this is more of a Mykal Walker question than it is a Troy Anderson. Troy Anderson needs to be put in a situation to be starter next year. Question is, do you like Evans more than Walker next to him going forward? If you think that Walker's the guy instead, then you probably let Evans walk.
Well, I don't think Michael's going anywhere. Yeah,
but
I don't think Walker's going anywhere. I think he's got a spot.
Well, then I think you let Evans walk, and you maybe draft him.
He's different. He's good in coverage, and he's not your going forward thumper. And as Dave says, where Evans making those tackles, or does it matter? Again, he's not making a ton of plays. He's doing a job. There's not a lot of difference making tackles in there. I thought Foye Oluokun played better than he's got a ton of tackles. Not quite as many as Oluokun, but he's got 134 tackles with 4 games left. He'll probably finish with 180. Okay. Well, so did Alex Singleton, and he was picked up as a nothing free agent to be a special teams guy.
It's a design scheme.
Tackles aren't a great, if you're playing inside linebacker, you're supposed to get tackles. But as you say, where are they getting them? And Kevin says, I'd let him go. He's replaceable. Yeah, I would, again, I think he's earned his money. Good value. Again, there's a lot of good value on this team. That's why they've been playing really well, despite having the value on this team is they're playing with half a salary. They're playing with 50%, less than 50% of their available salary cap. Because it's not available, so it's not quite the way to put that. But yeah, I think he's been good. I would be looking to try an upgrade there. Damian Williams, running back. Yeah. It's like we never saw you. He's at 1.6. I think he got hurt on the first play of the season. Definitely the first series. Damian Williams, running back, $1.6 million. See you later.
Right. And real quick on Evans, I just want to make one point. I think he's in a situation where he's a type, the 2-down thumper. You can find those after the draft. So if you are interested in getting a younger, cheaper, upward trend player that has more special teams upside than Evans, maybe you can draft one round 4 or 5. That'd be great. And if you don't get that guy, guess what? You can go into that third wave free agency, which is the post-draft free agency, and probably find somebody who can fit that niche skill set. That's very much a base package, come down, play the A gap or B gap side to side, run filler. Unless Evans wants to come back for the same contract for cheap. I mean, you take cheap guys, and that's one less one you have to worry about. But I think I could see him getting, two-year contract, $4 million.
Yeah, I mean, he can do a job. So
Yep.
someone, I think he should have a job next year. It just might not be with the Atlanta Falcons. Damian Williams is a Gonzalez. It's like you were never here. Running back, just $1.6 million down the drain, unfortunately. Punter, Bradley Pinion. He's on 1.5. That's fair. I mean, that's fairly average for a punter. He's been good. I got no problems with that. Fullback, Keith Smith. He's 30 years old, 1.4 million at the fullback position.
Yeah, I think you could probably bring him back for cheap without a lot of guaranteed money. And then if you find somebody that you like better there, it doesn't hurt a lot to move on. But this is a scheme that likes the fullback. I don't think Parker Hesse is going to be that kind of player for you. He's more of an up back, H back type. So I think that's probably fine. The fullbacks are somewhat dying out right now. Maybe there's another one that hits the market, given it is becoming such a niche position that you guys can find an upgrade. But I think for super cheap, even though he's older, I don't think it's the worst deal.
I sign him in a heartbeat. Keith Smith is a definite bring back for me at 1.4. He still plays a bunch of snaps, and he's really, really good. He is cheap, and I don't know that you are going to find an upgrade on him. I love the dude. Keith Smith, he's coming back for me. If someone's going to have to sign him and say, well, these guys signed him for $7 million. Okay, then you didn't match that. But if it's 2 or under, he better be an Atlanta Falcon next year is what I'm saying. Eric Harris, 32, will be 33 next year, was a starter last year, came back as a free agent because he was a free agent last year, signed a 1-year deal, $1.3 million.
Probably can find somebody similar.
See you later.
Yeah.
Bye. I like his leadership and everything, but I'll be shocked if he's an Atlanta Falcon next year.
Mm-hmm.
Left guard, Eli Wilkinson, who's battled some injuries, still just 27 years old, $1.2 million.
Love to bring him back. Versatile player. You pencil him in at left guard, and let's say in the draft, by far and away the best player in the draft there at 10 overall is Paris Johnson Jr. from Ohio State, who's played left tackle but also played guard. Guess what? You got a guy who can swing 2 spots well, but if you have to survive with him at right tackle, especially in the scheme where you protect your guys in the pure drop back sets, I think he could survive there. So definitely, I think that there's a chance though that Wilkinson's going to have more of a market given how he played and his versatility. I mean, he's been on, this is his 3rd or 4th team, and he has right tackle experience, guard experience. He looked pretty good out there. Again, like you mentioned, 27 years old. I wouldn't be surprised if he gets a, $5 million, $6 million over 2 years per year kind of deal.
And Dave says this offensive line is not as bad as some are making it out to be. Not as bad. They're ranked like in the top 5 now. When you talk about McGarry and Lindstrom and Matthews are all really good. And Wilkinson's been great when he's in there. And then you need center to play better next year. But this offensive line has been a revelation. It's been so much better than our wildest dreams when you look at it compared to last year, knowing the only external addition to this team was Eli Wilkinson. I didn't have very good hopes for this team on the offensive line, and the offensive line's been good. Not as bad. It's been good, really good.
And to
I like to say
context,
that, Arthur Smith has entered the effort phase of his game plan now. We're just going to run the dang ball. And it works.
Yeah. And I do want to add
he's 30 years old. Damiere Byrd, 1.2.
You can find a Damiere Byrd on the market. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, not that he's worth what you're paying him. I want to pay somebody more to do better. Yeah. I want to take some of that. He's a body out there. Jermaine Afidi brought in as a right tackle backup. He's 30, 1.2.
Again, same thing. You can find another backup tackle. If you bring him back for the same contract, that's fine. If he gets more or something, you rotate him in and out. How much of the roster turns over every single year?
Yeah,
is it like 30%?
I think there's an open roster spot right there that you're trying to upgrade. Again, a lot of these 1.2s are like veteran minimums where you were shopping off the Chicago Bears waiver wire. I think, including Jermaine, I think you want to spend, you want to turn some of these back-end roster guys from 1.2 veteran minimums to 3 million veteran players, guys that can play. not just like I've said a zillion times, and I'm only half kidding, shopping off the Chicago Bears waivers. That's where the Atlanta Falcons have been. Before I say this next person, what would you say a ace gunner special teams coverage guy is worth in the NFL?
Depends on how much else he can do. Really. And it also depends on your team makeup. If you're a team that's going to be playing grinded out football and every single yards counts without an explosive offense, then maybe you're talking $3 million a year kind of thing. You know,
Michael Ford, cornerback, 27 years old, 1.17. That's got to be a vet minimum because there's like 5 guys here at 1.187. That's got to be a minimum based on service time. Michael Ford, corner, 1.18.
I think it'd be something where I'm talking maybe, 2.5, 3, which is a bump up, but I'm not going to be high guarantees because that's a very physical ask position. So it's going to be one of those ones, maybe give him a 2-year deal, 5.5 million, but almost no guarantees on that back end.
Yeah. He is a phenomenal special teams player. He's not great as a defensive back in coverage. He's okay, but he has been out there and done okay at times. And when he's pressed, I don't want to see him out there. I want Isaiah Oliver. I don't know that it's going to be Casey Hayward coming back.
No.
I think he might be on a multi-year deal, might be on a 2-year deal because he would have been on here as one of the players in free agency. But I didn't think he would make the roster. And I forget special teams. We don't see special teams that much in the preseason stuff. Michael Ford has been a damned good gunner. You watch Bradley Pinion punt, you're going to see a lot of fair catches because the Predator's down there with his dreads staring the guy in his face already because he's already whipped his blockers going down as a gunner. So he's been really, really good. Tight end, Anthony Ferkser, 27.8 years old. He's 28 years old. Tight end, 1 point. Again, these guys are all 1.2. Bye. It's not the right guy for me. We're getting down to a different name on someone I will re-sign who was coming off an injury and is getting back into it. Vincent Taylor, defensive tackle, 29, 1.2. Nick, I'll be honest with you. I couldn't have told you he was on the team.
He's one of those guys. That's unfortunately, even how close we are to this team, there's always like 10 or 15 guys is like, man, when the hell did they add him?
I couldn't have told you definitively that he was actually on the team.
Yeah.
So Vincent Taylor is probably going to be walking. Bo Brinkley, long snapper. He's 32 years old, 1.1. Yeah, sign him again. You lost they had a long time long snapper, Pro Bowl that they bounced him on and off the roster for administrative purposes when they were trying to do this and do that. And finally he was gone. But long snapper, $1 million long snapper on a veteran. He's been solid. So Bo Brinkley, yes. Now, of the wide receivers that we talked about some of these guys, because they already waived one of them. Who's the guy they got from the Raiders? Braylon Edwards? Does that sound right? Or is that the old Michigan receiver?
No, it's Braylon Edwards from South Carolina. Yeah.
They already waived him.
Ryann
They've got a bunch of cheap guys. Daryl Hodge is at 1.07. Now, he's a guy that is playing like a 3 or a 4. He's not that much different for me than Olamide Zaccheaus. He could be my 5th or 6th wide receiver. He's a free agent. I think he's going to get a raise. He's at 20. He'll be 28 years old. I think he's got a chance to get a raise next year, if not with the Falcons, with somebody.
If you're the 4th or 5th wide receiver, you better damn well be cracking dudes in special teams. I'm becoming a special teams psychopath because of how bad the Broncos are. They're turning me into the special teams version of the Joker. But he's been playing well. I think that I don't think you can bring back Hodge and Zaccheaus, probably, especially if you're looking to upgrade that spot.
Yeah, because there's not enough roster spots. It's not that they're
not that they're not worth it, but you're looking for a
spot.
Tier up. I think they're both similar tier, different skill sets, but similar tier as far as impact. So let's say I'm going to put you on the spot now since you put me on it. Zaccheaus versus Bird. Who's getting that contract offer if you only can pick one?
Zaccheaus.
Yeah,
I'd have Zaccheaus. He's got 3 times the catches, twice the yards. And it feels like Hodge says he only has 12 catches. It just feels like they've been bigger impact catches. Maybe it's because he's averaging 16 and a half, but I feel like Hodge has had more crucial catches for me. His maybe it's because they pass the ball so infrequently. When they throw it downfield and complete it, it's like, oh yeah, that was a big play. But I would consider Hodge as my 5th or 6th receiver, which puts, someone like Frank Darby. But again, I'm looking to bring in a different tier of player next year into camp, and you're going to have to fight to keep your spot.
And
Nick Kwiatkowski, linebacker, 30 years old, special teams guy. He's been inactive a lot. I think he's done.
Yeah.
Now talking about, who's the first guy that came in for Pitts, the guy off the bench, acquired from Tennessee, had a gruesome ankle injury almost a year ago, is Michael Pruitt, who'll be 31 next year, who's on just $1 million a year.
Give him a 2-year deal. Bring him in. I'm very curious about how this Falcons team builds going forward. If they are going to be similar to Tennessee, I'm curious if this is a very 12 personnel heavy team going forward. Let's say the Falcons win a couple more games or round 2. I think this is a team that could be interested in another dynamic tight end out there, just because of how different you could build your team that way, especially with Kyle Pitts. But I think you bring Pruitt back. He's been solid out there. I think he's stepped up for Kyle Pitts being out.
I bring him back in a heartbeat. I make him 1 to 3. I'd offer him, you don't want to bid against yourself. But I think he's in for a raise next year now that he's healthy. Jaleel Johnson was practice squatted, waived, come in, and he had to start. They needed somebody that can play. And he not start, but he immediately came off of waivers and was put onto the 53 and was in the rotation at $1 million. You can do better than that. I think he's a practice squad guy at 28. That's another player who, okay, he's only making $1 million. What do you expect? I want to pay somebody more than that to be better than him next year when I've got some money. Colby Gossett, 27 years old. He's on $1 million. He's filled in when necessary. Can you do better as a backup than him in the draft or whatnot? Guard. Probably not. Matt Dickerson, 27 years old. No, he's not very good. No. Interesting one for me. Chuma Edoga. He's still only 25. He's from Powder Springs, which, Nick, you don't know the area around here, but that's about 40 minutes from the Dome. So he's a local kid, went out and played at USC, and he's just 25 years old. Got a start and did okay. The Falcons had a rotation at left guard when Wilkinson wasn't playing well, and Edoga was one of those guys. Been banged up a little bit, but I'd be willing to give him another cheap contract and see what he can do.
I think you'd love to have him back. I think he's going to look to walk. I think that he's shown enough and has enough pedigree that if you pay Lindstrom, you pay Matthew, you keep Matthews, you pay McGarry, I think he's going to look for an area that has, I think, more of an avenue to cracking the lineup, given his age and still potential upside. But if you can get him back, that'd be great.
All right, here's my guy that I'm definitely bringing back because he's earned it. Abdullah Anderson, who was a 53-man cut and now is starting for this team, which is what I said. When they cut him, I'm like, okay, the 53-man cuts are in, including one surprise cut. Abdullah Anderson should have been on this team initially. Cleared waivers, practice squad, elevated. He's starting. I don't necessarily want him as a starter, but as a $900,000 27-year-old, move him to 1.5 and have him be a rotational piece in a 6-man rotation on the front 3. Yes, please.
Won't argue. He's been solid. He's definitely a step down from Graham, but Graham is a starting quality guy out there. I saw somebody mention
Graham can play inside. You can put Abdullah in at the nose.
Yeah. Yep.
When you're in 3-4, Graham's a 3-4 end. Mm-hmm. A 4-3 defensive tackle when you go into a 4-man front, but you can put Abdullah Anderson in at nose.
Yep.
And do a job. Now here's a guy who's in for a race as far as I'm concerned, pending free agent. Okay, this is and you might be able to explain this one a little bit for me. And Abdullah Anderson's a restricted free agent. An exclusive rights free agent is running back Caleb Huntley.
He's going nowhere.
He's super cheap, $700,000. He's good, Nick. He's a good running back.
It's not even a conversation. If he's an exclusive rights free agent, he's going nowhere. Restricted free agent, you have different tenders that you can put on. You're talking about Abdullah Anderson. You might consider giving him a contract instead of the second-round tender because of how many people are actually going to look to sign him for over the second-year tender or second-round tender. We'd have to see what the numbers are. But exclusive rights free agent, the options are essentially, we offer you this tender. You either sign it or you retire from football. if we offer you the tender.
So it's like exclusive rights free agent. There's nothing free agent about this. This is you have one. You've basically
team
been
option.
drafted.
It's a team option.
You're still on a draft contract. This is a 1-year draft where you can either sit out the year or play for us.
Yep. Not even. I don't think
Caleb Huntley's coming back, and I love the way I love this running back room. Now, again, and it may have been Chris or Kevin that mentioned it earlier. Also, you're gonna have to shop for another running back. I think. I don't want Cordero Patterson touching the ball 20 times a game. I just don't. He's getting older, and I like having him as the X factor, not as the number one factor. And then finally, Rashad Fenton. I think that was the guy they got on trade deadline. I didn't realize he was this young. He's 25 years old, unrestricted free agent. He hasn't played very well. He might get an invite to camp as part of the 90, but that's about it.
Yeah.
Chris says Huntley needs to stay. Running back talent hasn't been solid this year since Michael Turner, before they ran him into the ground at least. Yeah, Michael Turner was really, really good. So that puts us right at 1 hour. Nice timing, Nick. But as you see, there's some players in here that I can say that I would want the Falcons to move on from, but not through any fault of their own. That were on this route, who've done a good job and helped make the Falcons competitive this year, but are on the roster because the Falcons couldn't afford anybody else. And it'll be up to them. You can invite almost 100 players in. It'll be up to them to keep their spots, to get camp invites. And it's been a showcase for a lot of these guys with the 1-year deals that Kadarius Hodge, Damiere Byrd, Rashaan Evans, let's see, who are some of these? Elijah Wilkinson. They've played themselves into big races. They've played themselves into big races with the opportunity to come to Atlanta and play a lot. And it's good for them. We should see that happen. But there's going to be, Nick, a lot of new faces on the 53 next year with $200 million instead of $98 million. And, 8 or 9 new draft picks.
Yep. And the big question comes down. I mean, it's the elephant in the room. What are the Falcons doing at quarterback? Because if it's Ritter, you have unbelievable amount of flexibility in cap room. If it's trade for somebody, not only are you losing cost-controlled rookies coming in, but you're probably paying big money for somebody. If you're drafting somebody, it's not as cost-controlled as Ritter, but, it's a different kind of swing and chance. So we'll see what happens. I think the Falcons are going to be doing, especially if you're picking top 10. I think Ritter would have to play unbelievable to not consider the quarterback room. And I think even still, you'd have to do due diligence because you took him in the 3rd round. That evaluation to draft him in the 3rd round is going to weigh more than anything he does over these 4 final games. Just the reality of the situation or how teams team build. But that's going to be the biggest question of what you do, because you do have a lot of cap room. Building around a traded Lamar Jackson, totally different finances than building around 10th overall pick Anthony Richardson, Will Levis, or Ritter.
Then every resource you have goes into the defense.
Yeah.
Because I've already got my 2 receivers and I've got a good offensive line and I've got cheap running backs. Now any available resources after the fact are going into defense if I go get Lamar Jackson.
Yeah, I could see you still go after another playmaker.
Exaggerating a little bit, but you know what I mean.
Yep. 100%.
So on that note, I think we're going to get out of here. It's a bye week coming up. So the next time you will see us, Nick and I will be back on Broncos for Breakfast at Mile High Huddle YouTube tomorrow morning on Thursday at 9:30 Eastern time. But we'll be back on Monday after the bye to talk about some of the happenings. And are the Falcons in last place? Yeah. They were about 3 seconds away from being, a game out of first or a top 10 pick. Actually, it would have moved up to 9 if the Saints hadn't blown that game.
Yeah, real quick, Chris Walker's comment, Huntley needs to stay. Running back talent hasn't been solid since Michael Turner. I cannot remember the name of the running back, but you had Tevin Coleman and
Devonta
Freeman. That was a damn good pair.
That was a good 1-2 punch.
Yeah.
Yeah, Devonta Freeman and Tevin Coleman was a good 1-2 punch. They made, again, Thomas Dimitroff gave a second contract to Devonta Freeman that made him the highest paid running back in the NFL at one point.
That was the mistake.
And he fell off a cliff.
Yep. I'm okay paying running backs big money, a second contract, if it's like a 1-year contract with an option. That's like...
Yeah, 1-year deals. A series of 1-year deals. We'll give you 12 this year. and see where it goes next year. We're gonna give you a 5-year, $60 million contract with 12 guaranteed. Okay, that's a 1-year, $12 million deal.
Yep. That's when you get killed. So like it's the Ezekiel Elliott contract, essentially. So if you can give,
but that was because Tevin Coleman was good. That was a good 1-2 punch for about 3 years. I'd have to look it back up, but that was a solid. And unfortunately, Devontae Freeman is talked about as much about for whiffing on blocks in the Super Bowl. There.
Yep.
AC1D Test says, hey, I caught you guys before you signed off. Well, appreciate you being here. Thanks for saying hey. Hit that like button. Hit that subscribe if you haven't already. Have to go back and watch it from the beginning, though. Have a great day, guys. Yeah, this will be a good episode that works well on demand because we call this evergreen, where going through these free agents, this will still be relevant in 2 weeks, in 3 weeks, as opposed to something that just lasts, a preview that lasts for a couple of days. And Rich coming in says, good morning, folks, from Anchorage, Alaska. Gracious. Definitely cold, and it's early there, that's for sure. And he says, it's Ritter time. I think it is. You got 10 days, 11 days to get ready. And I think it was Chris says, let me see if I can find it. I hadn't seen it, but in the promo for the game, they put him in there. Let me see. He says, we may already have been given a clue by the team. I don't think they would have let Ritter in the FedEx Christmas promotional video if they weren't high on Ritter. Just saying. Good look. Good clue. That's a good shout, Chris. Any last words before we get out of here?
God, I'm so ready for the draft. Is it April yet? just wake me up when it's April.
I'm ready for free agency. I mean, the team building for this team is going to be a blast. It is. It's going to be a blast this offseason.
I'm less excited for free agency because the Broncos are limited, and I'm not sure how desirable.
Expand your horizons, man.
You're right. But no, I'm excited and happy Wednesday. Hopefully everyone has a good rest of your day, and we'll see you again tonight for the Broncos.
Yeah, we'll see. And then for Falcons fans, if you don't want to watch us talk Broncos, then we will see you Monday morning as we reflect and talk about draft position, see where that's changed, reflect on the comings and goings, and hopefully lead into, as practice, Ritter could have been running with the ones by now. We'll see. So appreciate everybody being here. We will see you Monday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern. So until then, everybody have a great week and a great weekend. Peace.